He said, "I don't get out of bed to break even. Every day I want to safely make money." If you're a construction leader and you think the same way, you know how important accountability is. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. This is Eric Anderton. Welcome to episode 15 of Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. And today, we're going to be talking about accountability. Fortnite is a phenomenon. The video game generated in 2018 $2.4 billion in revenue. 250 million people have played in 2019 across the globe. And on average, players spend 6 to 10 hours a week playing the video game. It's highly addictive. In our family, we are trying extremely hard not to hit those averages. My sons love playing Fortnite, and I know that does not make our family unique. And my wife and I, as parents, we are making valiant efforts to limit their playing time. So this is what we've done. They can play 3 hours a week, 1 hour at a time, and we give them a bonus extra 30 minutes a week if they do their chores. So my boys are extremely motivated to do their chores. Thank you to Fortnite for that. And the way that we track them as they are playing is by using a timer, and we hold them accountable for the amount of time that they play. And one of the funny things is that they are quite good at holding each other accountable. In fact, my oldest, who is 13, he is an expert at using the timer to track my 12-year-old and my 8-year-old as they are playing Fortnite. And, you know, as the oldest child, he's got that, firstborn sense of duty. And also, he's extremely motivated to let them know when their time is done so that he can get them off the PlayStation and get some Fortnite on himself. So he makes sure to give them the 5-minute warning, and as soon as the buzzer goes off, he's quick to let them know, holding them accountable for the amount of time that they're playing the video game. So even at a young age, he has a clear understanding of how to hold people accountable. Accountability is holding people responsible for their actions and outcomes appropriate to their authority and within their realm of responsibility. I spend a lot of time coaching construction executives, and one of my clients recently said something to me that I really liked. He said, "I don't get out of bed to break even. Every day I want to safely make money." If you're a construction leader and you think the same way, you know how important accountability is. And in this episode, we're going to cover 3 aspects of accountability. Number 1, we're going to talk about how to lay the foundation for successful accountability. And this will really tie in how delegation and accountability work together. The second thing we're going to cover is how to have an accountability conversation. And then lastly, we'll discuss the benefit of accountability. But first, let's talk about why accountability is even necessary. The author, David Foster Wallace, wrote, "A real leader is somebody who can help us overcome the limitations of our own individual laziness and selfishness and weakness and fear and get us to do better things than we can get ourselves to do on our own." And one of the key tools that a real leader uses is accountability. And accountability is necessary because of human nature. Unfortunately, we can be lazy, we can be selfish, we can be weak, we can be fearful, we can be arrogant, You know, I could go on and on about the foibles of human beings. But we also, in the right circumstances and through the right choices, we have the potential to be diligent, sacrificial, strong, courageous, humble. But many times we need help, the help of other people. And that's where accountability comes in. It provides a degree of help to enable us to achieve our very best. And you think about the team aspect of construction. And this is one of the reasons why accountability is so important in construction, because every single construction project is a team effort. And it's not just about the individual contributors, but it's how the individual contributors impact every aspect of the project. So think about the impact of mistakes. Small mistakes compound over time. Big mistakes can be devastating. And every mistake has a ripple effect on the individual, on the crew that individual is involved with, on the project, on the company, on the relationship with project partners and with customers. And mistakes in the case of safety have an impact upon people's families. And so accountability is necessary to enable people to perform at the highest possible level. So let's talk about how to lay the foundation for successful accountability. There's 3 C's that I'd like you to remember. Number 1 is capability. Number 2 is capacity. And number 3 is clarity. And the way to think about it is in terms of these questions. Number 1, if I'm going to hold someone accountable, are they capable of what I'm going to hold them accountable for? The second question is, do they have the capacity to do the thing that I'm going to hold them accountable for? And number 3, and this is critical, have I been clear in describing to them the task or the project that I want them to complete so that I have the right to then hold them accountable? Let's first talk about this idea of capability. We'll go back to the definition of accountability. Accountability is holding people responsible for their actions and outcomes appropriate to their competency, authority, and within their realm of responsibility. Think for a moment about a competent equipment operator in your organization. Let's say you have equipment operators in your construction company. That equipment operator may make a competent foreman, but then go on to be an incompetent superintendent. So the equipment operator was good at running his machine, and as a foreman was competent at leading a small crew in his area of specialty, but as a superintendent, where he has to deal with PMs from his own company, different field disciplines, multiple projects, he falls short. This is what's known as the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle is a concept in management developed by Lawrence J. Peter, which observes that people in a hierarchy tend to rise to their level of incompetence. In other words, an employee is promoted based on their success in previous jobs until they reach a level at which they are no longer competent, as skills in one job do not necessarily translate to another. So in other words, what made that person a good foreman doesn't necessarily translate all the way into being a good superintendent. And this is very important if you're going to have a successful, accountable relationship with the people that you lead. You must ask, is this person actually capable of what I'm asking them to do and what I'm going to hold them accountable for? What technical skills might they need in order to execute this task that I'm delegating to them? They may be competent technically, but they may lack capability because perhaps they need training in their own leadership. Maybe they have communication issues that they need some upgrading in. Perhaps there's morale issues. I'm going to ask them to do something, but the morale of the team as a whole is lacking because of some sort of relationship issue or some leadership issue. Or maybe there's a moral issue. Someone is technically capable. I know that they should be able to do it, but for whatever reason, they're allowing that laziness or selfishness or weakness or fear to keep them from doing the task. And so in order to lay that foundation for successful accountability, I must ask, Is this person actually capable? Once I've affirmed that they are capable, and if they're not capable, what's the point of giving them the task in the first place? You know what to do if they're not capable, right? You have to either address the issue of morale, you have to address the issue of laziness, perhaps you have to give them some training, but whatever the case is, don't delegate and hold someone accountable for something that they're not capable of doing. Now go on to the next thing. In terms of the foundation for successful accountability, do they have the capacity? Let's talk for a moment about capacity, or another way of putting it is bandwidth. 5G is the next generation of mobile networking technology following 4G. So I got a Samsung phone, right? It's a 4G phone. 5G is on the horizon. How many of you right now have 5G phones? Well, I'm recording this in 2019, so not many people do, but it's coming. Next year or the year after, everyone's going to have a 5G phone. Much like every generation before it, 5G aims to make mobile communication faster and more reliable as more and more devices go online. Now, you can have a 5G network, but if you have a 4G phone, you lack the capacity to fully benefit from 5G. In the same way, you can have a bunch of work that needs to be done, but if your people are overcapacitated, if they don't have the bandwidth to take on new tasks, then how can you hold them accountable for those tasks? So think of your most talented superintendent here for a moment. Perhaps he or she is running 2 or 3 projects, overseeing foremen, interacting with project managers and project engineers, and they're doing a terrific job. And you've got this sweet project that is very technical, that this particular superintendent would excel at. But the question is, does this person have the capacity to take on that additional project? And your answer to that question may be no. So you cannot hold them accountable for something that they don't have the capacity to do, even if they have the capability and even if they want to do it. So what must you do in that situation? Well, there's 3 things that you can do. Number 1, you can take projects off of their plate. In other words, you can delete certain projects from their bandwidth so that you can add this additional project. Or you could defer something that they're currently doing. You can ask them to just lay it aside temporarily so that they can free up some bandwidth and take on this new project. Or let's say one of the projects that they're working on is coming towards the end. The technical hurdles have been crossed, and you're just sort of buttoning things up. And you can put perhaps a less capable superintendent or a less experienced superintendent onto that project. In other words, delegate that project off of their plate and free up bandwidth so that they can focus on this new project. In other words, if you're going to hold someone accountable, you must make sure that they have the capacity to do what you're asking them to do. And then the last aspect of successfully laying the foundation for accountability is this idea of clarity. Have I been clear in communicating what needs to be done? And in order to make sure that you've been clear, use the 3T technique. Okay, so let me break that down for you real simply. Number 1, the task. What is it that you want to be done? Now, it could be a small task, it could be a large task. Number 2, technique. How do I want it done? Now, you've got to be careful when you're getting into the realm of how you want things done, because as a leader, as much as possible, you want to empower people to do the tasks in the way that they see fit. So you don't want to be micromanaging exactly how you want things done, but you want to communicate the general parameters of how you want something done. So first, what you want done. Second, how you want done. So task and technique. And then the last is time. And I find this is where many construction leaders kind of fall a bit short because they don't set a firm timeline as to when they want things done. And as a result of that, they delegate a task, but because they haven't been clear on the timeline, when they come back to inspect that task, they're surprised when it isn't done. So a particular task may be, let's say, in your schedule, but if you're delegating a task and holding someone accountable for a task that isn't specifically in a project schedule, make sure that you're giving them a timeline when you want that task completed so that you can hold them accountable. Okay, so that's how you lay the foundation for successful accountability. You ask, are they capable? And then you ask, do they have the capacity? And the last thing you ask is, have I been clear? Capability, capacity, clarity. Now, how do you have accountable conversations? This is the second thing we're going to look at. How do you have an accountability conversation? You got to get into the rhythm of accountability, and it really depends on the tasks that you're doing. But accountable conversations can happen on a daily basis. Many times they happen in construction companies on a weekly basis. So let's say you're a project manager, or you're leading a group of project managers, and you get together on a Wednesday and you go through the numbers and you see where the labor is hitting its numbers or where the issues are in a project, and you're having those accountable conversations every week. If you're a foreman, maybe you're having those accountable conversations every day. You're gathering your guys together. You're making sure that they're hitting their numbers in terms of their production. You're making sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of safety. You're having those daily conversations. In some cases, you may be getting into a rhythm of multiple check-ins throughout a day, particularly when you've got a rookie on the job site or a new project engineer, and they just need a little bit of hand-holding. And we don't want to do that hand-holding all of our lives, but we're willing to have multiple accountable conversations, perhaps, every day in order to get someone off the ground and make sure they're going in the right direction. So when you get into that accountable conversation itself, how should you do it? Well, there's 3 questions that you should always ask in an accountability conversation. So you've delegated a task to someone, you're following up with them on that task. The first question you ask is very simple. Did you do it? Did you do the task? The second question is, if not, why not? So be very straightforward. Just come right out and ask them, did you do what I asked you to do? And if they didn't, then you ask, why not? Now, don't assume it's because it's their fault. I know when I was just handling this with one of the people who works for me. They didn't do a task in the way that I wanted them to. I just found that out. And my first thought was to get angry at them. Got to be honest. It was to get angry. My second thought, thankfully, was perhaps I wasn't clear in communicating what I wanted them to do. So don't trust your first instinct when you find out that someone doesn't do it, particularly if you're like me and you tend to be a little more critical of others than you should be. Assume that it was something in the way that you communicated. Perhaps go back to our first idea and assume that maybe it was because of their capability, their capacity, or your lack of clarity. So ask them, why didn't you do it? And allow them to give you some feedback and come back in terms of the clarity. Was it something that you were unclear about, or perhaps they didn't know how to do it, or perhaps they didn't have enough time to do it? But allow them to give you some feedback. And whatever the case is, then you can ask them, how can I help? If you're going to ask them, did you do it? And if you're going to ask them, if not, why not? The third question then in an accountable conversation is, how can I help you? So again, in that question, you're asking questions of capability, capacity, and clarity. You're always checking in to make sure that the person that you are leading knows what needs to be done, is capable of doing what needs to be done, and has the capacity to do it. And as you are making sure of that on an ongoing basis, then you can successfully hold them accountable. Now, I know that many, many people might be listening to this and thinking, why don't people just know better? Why can't I just delegate tasks to people and not have to hold them accountable? And it was interesting. I was talking to one of my executive coaching clients, and he runs a division of a large construction company. You know, he does hundreds of millions of dollars a year in work. He runs at a hard pace. He's decisive. He's competent. He's energetic. And he's the type of guy who, if you give him a task, he just takes care of it right away. No messing around. It's going to get done, dusted, off his plate, and he's on to the next thing. And we were chatting during one of our regular coaching calls, and he was frustrated. He had given someone a task to do, and they hadn't done it. He had checked in with them once. He had checked in with them twice, and they still hadn't done it. And we went back through this conversation and the delegation that he had gone through, and he realized that the reason why they hadn't done it is because they are not like him. They don't run at the same sense of urgency, they don't have the same level of decisiveness, and therefore it was necessary for him as a leader to give them a clear timeline as to when he wanted the task done, and he had neglected to do that. Okay, so don't assume that people should know better, and don't assume that just because you've given them a task to do, that they're going to do it in the same time frame that you would do it. Give them that clear time frame so that you can hold them accountable for the execution of the task. And if you're too busy to hold people accountable, then you need to rearrange your calendar. Okay? Think about your direct reports. You should be having regular meetings with your direct reports, and in those meetings with your direct reports, there should be some aspect of accountability going on, where they're reporting back to you about the things that you've given them to do. And again, this is not about micromanaging. This is not about playing the hero and getting involved in everyone's business all the time. This is simply about a well-run, efficient team where you're delegating tasks, they're executing those tasks, and you're holding them accountable for the execution of those tasks. Because you see, I really want you to think about the consequence of a lack of accountability. Think of the projects that right now are behind schedule. Why are they behind schedule? What responsibility does your company have for this project being behind schedule? If you really dive beneath the surface, you might find that there is a lack of accountability. Think about the quality issues. If there's a lot of rework on your projects, is that because people are moving too quickly and are not being held accountable to really go through the processes that you've given them in order to build successfully? What about safety? We all know the consequence of safety on a lack of safety on a job site. You lose time. You lose the use of a good human resource. There's insurance costs. There's workers' comp claims, and in the worst situations, families are affected forever as a result of a lack of safety. Are your foremen holding your guys accountable for the safety procedures that you've set out in your organization? Look at those safety numbers and think about the accountable conversations that you need to have in order to make sure that your projects are being built on time with the quality that you're looking for and safely. Remember what my client said earlier in this episode, right? I didn't get out of bed to break even, all right? I get out of bed every day to build safely profitable projects. And why don't we hold people accountable? What's the big issue with accountability? I think the main issue for most people is either a fear of conflict or a sense of overwhelm where you don't have time to check in, or simply neglect. You don't see it as your duty as a leader to hold people accountable, and I want to encourage you and everyone in your organization who's a leader. Accountable conversations should be your bread and butter. They should be something that you're having on a daily basis. Again, not because you're micromanaging, not because you're playing the hero and getting in people's business, but simply because you are making sure that what needs to be done is done in your organization with a level of consistency and a level of excellence. Okay, so we've talked about how to lay the foundation for successful accountability. We've talked about how to have accountable conversations. Now, let's talk about the benefit of accountability. And there are 3 F's that you can remember here in terms of the benefits of having those accountable conversations. And the first F is flashlight. The second is filter. And the third is fun. Flashlight, filter, fun. If you are having consistent, regular, accountable conversations, they will act like a flashlight. The flashlight first will shine on you, and it will show you where you are falling short as a leader. Remember, a real leader is someone who can help you to overcome the limitations of your own individual laziness, selfishness, weakness, and fear. And as you are holding people accountable and seeing where they're falling short, it really falls on you as the leader to take responsibility for their failings and for their shortcomings and to help them to overcome. And it also helps to shine the flashlight on areas where you might need to train, areas where you might be over-capacitating someone and someone just doesn't have the bandwidth to do what needs to be done, areas in your leadership where you're unclear about what it is that you want people to do, or you're unclear about those timelines, those critical aspects of delegation that then enable you to hold people accountable. So the benefit of accountability is, first, it's a flashlight. It helps you to up-level your game and then other people to up-level their games as well. Second, it's a filter. Accountability is a filter. Think about the people in your organization who resist accountable conversations and resist accountability. Think about the Cowboys and the Mavericks who may be technically good, but they just don't want those accountable conversations. They like to shift the blame onto other people and not take full responsibility for the outcomes of their projects. You know what they're doing when you're having accountable conversations? They are filtering themselves out of your organization. And then the people who embrace accountability, who want accountability, who are willing for accountability, they're filtering themselves into your organization. And you can use effective, appropriate accountability as a filter to remove people from your organization who shouldn't be there and to secure the loyalty of the people who should be there. Because the last benefit of accountability is fun. You know, I don't know about you, but I have a love-hate relationship with accountability. I hate accountability in a certain way because it exposes my laziness, selfishness, weakness, and fear. But I love it because it exposes my laziness, selfishness, weakness, and fear, and it helps me to do things better than I could do on my own. And when you're in accountable relationships with people, it builds healthy teams that win. And I don't know about you, but we're in business to win, right? We're in business. If you're a construction leader, you're in business to build projects safely and profitably. And I tell you, accountable teams are winning teams, and that is something that is fun to be on a winning team. You know, I've coached youth sports for many, many years, and I realize that sports for youths are all about character development. But one thing I always say to my sons, winning is better than losing. And you know it's true. Winning is better than losing. And accountable teams are teams that win, and winning is a lot of fun. So that's the benefit of accountability. It's a flashlight, it's a filter, and it produces teams that are fun. So back to Fortnite. It's really interesting. I was chatting with my 13-year-old a little while ago, and he was telling me how he had held his brothers accountable for their 1 hour of playing time. He had used the tool of the timer. He had given them the 5-minute warning. And then when they were done, he was faithful to get them off the PlayStation so he could get on and play. And so I asked him, I said, son, how did you do with the timer? And it was interesting because the very day that I noticed that he had checked in on his brothers and held them accountable, he had neglected to time himself. He sheepishly admitted that he hadn't held himself accountable for the hour that he was supposed to play Fortnite for. So I guess accountability is essential, even for those who hold others accountable. So how can you get into action? How can you use this information here? How can you get this 1% of inspiration to add in with your 99% of perspiration this week as a construction leader? Number one, lay the foundation for accountability by asking those 3 questions. Are they capable? Do they have the capacity? And am I clearly communicating? Number 2, get into a regular rhythm of accountability with people. If necessary, multiple times a day, particularly with, someone new in the business. Don't overdo it. Don't micromanage. Don't play the hero. But get into those accountable conversations and ask the 3 questions. Did you do it? If not, why not? And how can I help? And as you're getting into those accountable conversations, and you may find the resistance within you to having those difficult conversations, perhaps because you don't want the conflict or just because you're so busy, remind yourself of the benefits of accountability. It's a flashlight to show you both the areas that you need to improve and they need to improve. It's a filter, filtering out the people who are not interested in accountability and bringing in the people who are. And it creates fun because accountable teams are winning teams and winning is fun. And then just the last thing is this. If you are falling short in any area of your responsibility, in other words, if you are yourself, maybe like my son, who timed others but it wasn't timing himself, own that and make sure that you yourself are accountable for your areas of responsibility. So accountability is just one aspect of being a successful leader. And if you'd like to clarify in more detail some specific things that you need to do to excel as a construction leader, you should check out the Construction Leaders Dashboard. It's one of the simplest and most powerful tools for leaders in construction companies of all sizes. All of my clients use it to help them to clarify the mission and the vision and the values that drive their organization, the strategic initiatives they need to execute as leaders, their metrics that tell them whether or not they're being successful, the key relationships that they need to develop, their particular edge, what they really bring to the table that sets them apart from other contributors, and also their own development opportunities. And you can download your own copy of the Construction Leaders Dashboard, fill that out, and on one page get really clear on what you need to do in the next year to be a successful construction leader. So to instantly download your copy of the dashboard, go to my website, ericanderton.com/CLD. C as in cat, L as in Larry, and D as in dog. ericanderton.com/CLD. Download your copy of the Construction Leaders Dashboard and fill that out for yourself. If you have any questions, of course, you can contact me via my website, ericanderton.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And again, I really appreciate you listening to this episode of Construction Genius. I hope it helps you to have those accountable conversations and continue to check out the other episodes if you haven't already, the interviews and the solo episodes. Feel free to share this with other people who you think may benefit from it. And again, take this 1% of inspiration, apply it to your 99% of perspiration, and act like a construction genius out there on the job site and in the office this week. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.